But the first objection here is this idea that there's just no logical space to posit theism as an explanation. So someone may say, well, we have this like material world and it's what we experience. So why posit something that goes beyond this world? Why can't it just be the world? Why posit this unobserved maybe entity of God? So how would you respond to that kind of objection?
Well, and it is one that is definitely in the culture as well as in the intellectual climate. But I would say that it's an objection that's often founded on a false premise. What we have from the natural sciences is a portrait of the cosmos that brackets mind or consciousness. So in physics, chemistry, and biology, you nowhere get observations, experience, and the like. Science cannot occur without there being scientists. I know that sounds really bizarre to point out, but there are scientific naturalists, for example, Daniel Dennett, one of the new atheists, and he does wind up wanting to have science without any scientists. He kind of ultimately eliminates consciousness. And what I would say is that the most certain thing that we can grasp is the existence of consciousness, experience, observation, our use of reason, and the practice of science itself requires all this. So the first thing I would do in a dialogue or debate was I'd seek to interrupt the premise of like we have a really clear grasp of the physical world. Well, I think we have a clearer grasp of consciousness, experience, intentionality than we do of a mind-independent world. So what's happened today, just really briefly, Zach, I don't want to go on too much.
No, you're good. You're good.
Okay. What's happened is that, and Thomas Nagel's pointed this out, an atheist, but he's kind of on our side in a way. He's pointed out that modern science bracketed the mind, and then philosophical scientists thought, well, maybe we don't need mind at all. Maybe all we need is biochemical process, neuropsychology, but without the experience. And it's kind of like Robert Louis Stevenson. I think it was him. He wrote a little short story called The Shadow. And what happens is that this shadow takes a life of its own and ultimately brings about the death of the person who's creating the shadow. And that's kind of what's happened, is that we've got this juggernaut, highly successful natural science, but what it's doing is it's forgetting the fact that you need a much more solid understanding of experience. Now, it doesn't follow that therefore God exists or something like that, but it does interrupt that particular line of reasoning.
So when we're looking at like this question of like, well, aren't we just like adding something unobserved with regards to like God? Do you think it's good to start with the idea of us just like having experience and consciousness and like this first person activity that kind of like interrupts with the idea that we just live in like this like material, causally closed world and such?
Yes, I think so. And also you mentioned, I think you referenced, and I'm sure this does reflect an objector who might say God is unobservable. But in a sense, to make 2 points. One is we are in some ways unobservable to each other. That is, I can see your behavior, I can hear you. Obviously, we would say, I'm seeing you right now. But do we do this because we're functioning as a mind-body integrated whole. And that's perfectly sensible. But 2 things. One is technically, we don't observe literally your thinking and feeling and experiencing. We can open up your brain, open up your skull and observe neurological patterns, but I can't literally see the thought, Charles is talking. And so I would say there's that to consider. And second, the world is more mysterious than these naturalists make it out to be. And secondly, people do claim to have an experience of God. This is something across cultures, across time, and there's a center of the study of religious experience actually in Wales in Great Britain, and the accumulation of reported experiences are not just like seances and so on. No, people. I myself would go on record as saying that in liturgy and meditation, I've had a sense of living coram Deo, that is, in the presence of God. So that's part of a datum, along with the contingency of the cosmos, the fact that it's ordered, the fact that consciousness has emerged. All of these need to be taken into account.